Let's see what our senior political commentator Nigel Nelson and former Conservative advisor Claire Pearsall make of all of that. Claire, let's start with you.
Well, I think it was very telling that he didn't want to answer your question about how this was all going to be paid for. It's the mythical windfall tax all over again. But I think we now have to get our heads around the fact this is an election campaign which is going to drag on. So if you don't like politics, this is going to be a really awful time for everybody. I just feel that it's very flat at the moment. It's one side pointing out they're not like the other side. Nobody's coming up with any ideas for campaigning that is positive, and it was interesting that Jonathan Ashworth didn't rule out the more dirty campaigns like the one you mentioned with the inaccurate claims of Rishi Sunak not locking up sex offenders. And I think that's where we're heading, unfortunately. It's going to be a battle as to who can go the lowest on campaigning. And I think the general public just want a set of policies where they're going to see who is going to lay out the best deal for them. Are they going to feel better off? Are they going to live a more prosperous, happy, healthy life? And that's what they want to see. They don't want to see the politicking that goes around with campaigns. We may enjoy it as being, you know, Nigel and I, we're so involved in campaigns that you get lost in that. But I think the general public actually now are fed up with it. They want to see some positive.
Yeah, and just to make the point about that, I wish I'd been whispering in Jonathan's ear, but on the question of money, the various things he mentioned have been paid for, because if you take the non-dom tax raising 3.2 billion, that you're looking at 1.8 billion of that going on 200,000 more hospital appointments.
Well, 2 million more.
2 million more. Sorry, yes, that's 2 million more. New scanners to actually detect cancer, new dental appointments, and also breakfast clubs in schools. Now, once you've paid for all that, you still have 1.4 billion left.
Well, yeah, but as Andrew Fisher points out in his piece in The Eye, as I say again, former Executive Director of Policy at the Labour Party, he mentions his 2 million more appointments, but he says, except the NHS is underpinned by a staffing and social care crisis to which Keir Starmer has not allocated any funding to solve.
Well, he has, because it is that funding, and the idea is, and again, it depends how people behave, but the idea is that doctors and nurses will be offered overtime payments to work weekends and evenings to clear that backlog. If they don't want to do it, obviously it's not going to work, but the money is there for those overtime payments.
But it's all very well to suggest that you're going to get free breakfast club places for children. Right, OK, so that's funded out of this as well. What about the mental health worker in every school? Is that coming out of the same...
it comes out of that, and you've still got more than £1 billion left.
A billion isn't a lot of money, though.
No, it's not, but the point I'm making is, when you're talking about what has been costed, the idea they're spending it over and over again, they're not. That has actually been costed. And your earlier point, Stephen, is right. What if all those non-doms leave the country? But assuming they don't and they get this money, it is actually all factored in.
But it's still heavily reliant on significant economic growth in this country, which, as you said...
that's not...
Well, no, but a lot... Well, I would suggest sustaining it is.
Yeah.
And as you said in the last hour, the entire Labour growth plan and this 28 billion green energy, green economy stuff, which may be great, I don't know, but they've put that back several years as well. So
yes, and I'm sorry that's had to be watered down. Again, it's high interest rates that have caused that. It's a pity they couldn't introduce that immediately, because we are looking at that working quite late on in their first term. But when it comes to actually their firm spending commitments, those have been costed in and paid for.
Right.
But it really does depend on whether these non-dom people stay. It's a massive assumption to make that you're working on this pot of money being available to you when you've got absolutely no idea. But you need the economic growth to go alongside it, because if people do leave, you need to be able to get the income from other places.
Well, I hate to... Well, maybe I should introduce this in the middle of you two
we're going to
really disagreeing with you, yes. According to the Mail, divorce rates have fallen.
Good.
This is some nice news. Yeah.
It means you can healthily disagree and still not have to divorce Nigel, Claire.
Exactly, and because we enjoy our debates, and it's the best thing that we do.
Do you debate at home all the time, over the breakfast table?
This is exactly what we're like.
This is how we behave at home. Yeah. So if you're having breakfast with us, this is what we'd be discussing over breakfast.
It's always very agreeable, though. You do it in a very nice way.
We do, and now at the moment we've got the 15-year-old home, and he joins it. Doesn't he?
Yes.
That's always really good. But this article I thought was quite interesting, that divorce rates are actually falling, considering that January is always considered to be the divorce month.
Oh, is it?
Where everybody goes. I think we've just had Divorce Monday. Everybody's fed up.
We're on files, don't they, at the same time?
They do, but now the chance of a marriage breaking down is now 35%, down from a high of 44%. Could be a lot of factors, and one of them, which is quite interesting, at the end of the article, a separate report earlier this week by Legal & General has found that 270,000 couples have put off divorce due to cost of living crisis.
Right.
So I'm not convinced that
it's a romantic
they're falling
because
men are becoming better husbands, whatever that may mean.
But it's interesting.
Yes, they are.
No, but it's interesting, though, isn't it? Even if with a cost of living situation, if that encourages people to stick together longer, perhaps they can resolve their differences.
Well, yeah, I find it a bit uncomfortable, don't you? That the idea that people who don't get on... I mean, there's always a danger of domestic abuse then being thrown in there. If people actually don't get on but are forced to stay together because they can't afford to split up. I mean, divorce is really expensive anyway. Yeah. But if they really can't actually get away from each other, that I find a bit worrying.
I don't know. I think people throw in the towel too easily.
Richer for poorer? Should be perhaps sticking to it a little bit longer.
OK,
no?
right. Speaking as somebody who did file for divorce in a January in the distant annals of time, yes, you have to work at it, but sometimes you have to realise that it's making everything worse by trying to fix it. And that was my situation. In order to fix it, it would have just required somebody to change a lot more than they were willing to do so. But it was just no good for everybody's mental health, mine included. And I had a very small baby to think of at the time. So it's not always good to stick together. I think you do have to work for it, but actually do the work before you get married. Make sure you have that basis there, because I think sometimes you know, marry in haste, which is never ever a good thing.
No.
Which is something that I didn't do the second time round. I'm very, very happy.
What an example you are.
We took our time.
Oh,
good advice, though,
you
Claire,
old
advice.
charmer, Nigel. You see, you've got that glint in your eye. We're out of time. You can't build your part now, Nigel.
Nigel, Claire, thank you very much.
See you a little bit later on.
The weather's looked bleak, hasn't it? But it could be set to change. Here's Alex.